In the hushed moments before dawn, when shadows still claim dominion over a quiet suburban Georgia neighborhood, the threads of a family's life begin to unravel. The air hangs heavy with unspoken truths as Kenya Crawford stirs from sleep, disturbed by an inexplicable sense of wrongness. The empty space beside her in bed serves as a silent herald of the devastation awaiting her. Moving through her darkened home, each step carrying her closer to a truth she could never have imagined, Kenya follows an instinct that pulls her toward her living room. The familiar path she's walked countless times before now feels different, charged with a foreboding that makes every footfall seem to echo with significance. Street lights filter through partially drawn blinds, casting strange patterns across walls that have witnessed years of family memories. What Kenya discovers in that dim-lit room transcends ordinary betrayal. There stands Justin Crawford, her husband, a man whose name once sparked pride and admiration throughout their community, engaged in an act so unthinkable it would forever alter the course of multiple lives. Beside him, a 12-year-old relative, a child entrusted to their care, her innocence shattered in the shadows of what should have been a safe haven. Justin Crawford's story had once read like a classic tale of athletic triumph. His rise to prominence painted vibrant strokes across the canvas of their small Georgia town's identity. As a college football star, he possessed an electric combination of physical prowess and natural charisma that transformed every game into a showcase of possibility. Crowds didn't merely watch Justin Crawford play, they witnessed the embodiment of their collective dreams, each touchdown a testament to the potential that hard work and talent could unlock. Those who knew him spoke of his magnetic presence, the way he could command attention without seeming to try. In the golden years of his athletic career, Justin carried not just a football but the aspirations of an entire community. Young athletes studied his moves, hoping to replicate his success, while parents pointed to him as an example of what their children might achieve. Welcome to True Crime Stories Archive, your gateway to the chilling world of real-life horror, where we unearth the darkest moments of human nature and expose truths that often lie hidden beneath seemingly normal facades. Before we delve into today's haunting tale, take a moment to subscribe to our channel for daily deep dives into true crime cases that will challenge your perceptions of trust, justice, and human nature. Kenya had been there through it all, watching from the sidelines as her husband's star rose. Their love story had seemed destined for greatness, built on shared dreams and mutual support. She stood beside him as fame embraced them, and more importantly, remained steadfast when the cheering stopped and reality began to cast its longer shadows. The transition from celebrated athlete to ordinary citizen proved more challenging than anyone had anticipated. Without the structure of training schedules and game days, Justin struggled to find his footing in a world that no longer revolved around his athletic abilities. The echoes of past glory became a burden rather than a boost, each reminder of former greatness highlighting the distance between what was and what had become. During these difficult times, Kenya emerged as more than just a supportive spouse. She became the foundation upon which they built their new life, navigating the complexities of marriage counseling and emotional upheaval with unwavering determination. Her commitment to their relationship transcended ordinary loyalty, rooted in a deep belief that love could overcome any obstacle. Through these trials, Kenya demonstrated a resilience that went beyond traditional marital devotion. She orchestrated difficult conversations, arranged counseling sessions, and worked tirelessly to rebuild trust where it had begun to erode. Her efforts stemmed from a profound belief in redemption and the sanctity of family bonds. Each small victory, every moment of progress, reinforced her conviction that their struggles would ultimately strengthen their relationship. Yet nothing in those years of challenges could have prepared her for what she discovered that fateful morning. The scene before her in the living room represented more than a betrayal of marriage vows, it was a violation of the most fundamental human trust. The young relative, barely 12 years old, had been brought into their home under the premise of family connection and care. This child, whose name would be protected throughout the subsequent investigation, had been subjected to the unthinkable by someone who should have been a protector. In those first shocking moments, Kenya's world tilted on its axis. Her mind struggled to reconcile the men before her with the husband she thought she knew. The familiar contours of their living room, usually a space of comfort and family gatherings, now seemed distorted by the weight of what she witnessed. Every family photo on the walls, every shared memory contained within those rooms, took on a different significance in light of this revelation. The young victim's story emerged gradually, each detail more heartbreaking than the last. When she finally found the courage to confide in her mother, her words came haltingly, weighted with confusion and fear. The child's account painted a picture of betrayed trust and manipulation, of a respected family member who had exploited his position of authority. Her testimony would later become crucial evidence, but in those initial moments of disclosure, it was simply a child trying to make sense of actions that defied understanding. Detective Mark Scruggs approached the case with the methodical precision that complex and sensitive investigations demand. Each interview was conducted with careful attention to detail, every piece of evidence meticulously documented. The detective's experience with similar cases had taught him the importance of building a case that could withstand the scrutiny of both the legal system and public opinion. As the investigation unfolded, Justin Crawford's responses evolved in telling ways. His initial categorical denials gave way to a more disturbing narrative, an attempt to shift blame onto the child herself. This strategy, as desperate as it was deplorable, only served to highlight the depth of his moral corruption. Forensic evidence would later corroborate the victim's account, adding scientific weight to her brave testimony. The impact of the case rippled through their community like shock waves from an earthquake. People who had once proudly displayed Justin Crawford jerseys now grappled with feelings of betrayal and disgust. Parents who had encouraged their children to emulate his athletic achievements now struggled to explain his fall from grace. The story dominated local news cycles, each new development adding another layer to the community's collective trauma. For Kenya, the decision to support the investigation rather than protect her husband came at an enormous personal cost. She faced criticism from those who believed a wife should stand by her husband regardless of circumstances. Others questioned whether she could have been unaware of his predatory behavior. Yet she remained resolute, choosing truth over loyalty to a man who had betrayed not only their marriage but the most basic tenets of human decency. The courtroom became another battlefield, where justice and truth confronted the desperate maneuvers of a fallen idol's defense. Kenya's testimony stood out for its unwavering honesty, even as she visibly struggled with the emotional weight of publicly condemning the men she had once loved. Her courage in facing both her husband and the scrutiny of the public gallery earned her the quiet respect of law enforcement and court officials alike. In the hushed atmosphere of the courtroom, every word of testimony seemed to hang in the air, weighted with significance. The prosecution built their case methodically, presenting evidence that transformed Justin Crawford from hometown hero to predator. Security footage from nearby homes confirmed the timeline of events. Text messages revealed patterns of manipulation. Medical evidence supported the victim's account with clinical precision. The defense team's strategy crumbled in the face of overwhelming evidence. Their attempts to portray Justin as a respected community figure who had lost his way after his athletic career ended fell flat against the stark reality of his actions. When he finally took the stand, his demeanor had changed dramatically from the confident athlete who once commanded attention. Gone was the charismatic smile that had charmed fans and reporters, in its place, a haunted expression that seemed to acknowledge the gravity of his crimes. During cross-examination, the prosecutor systematically dismantled Justin's attempts at justification. Each question exposed another layer of deception, another carefully constructed lie. The gallery watched as the man they thought they knew revealed himself to be someone entirely different. Parents who had once cheered his touchdowns now sat in stunned silence, some wiping away tears as they confronted the true nature of someone they had trusted with their children's admiration. Kenya's testimony proved pivotal. She spoke with a clarity that cut through the legal maneuvering and technical arguments. Her account of that morning, the discovery, her initial shock, and the painful decision to pursue justice, resonated with raw authenticity. The prosecuting attorney guided her through her statement with careful precision, allowing her words to paint a vivid picture of betrayal and moral courage. "I found him there," she testified, her voice steady despite the emotion visible in her eyes. "Standing in our living room, the same room where we had hosted family gatherings, celebrated holidays, built what I thought was a life together. But in that moment, everything we had built revealed itself as a facade, hiding something unforgivable." The young victim's mother took the stand next, her testimony providing crucial context about behavioral changes she had noticed in her daughter. She described how a once outgoing child had become withdrawn, how nightmares had begun to plague her sleep, how her grades had started to slip, all silent signals that something was terribly wrong. Her words added another dimension to the prosecution's case, highlighting the ripple effects of abuse on not just the victim, but entire families. Expert witnesses from child advocacy centers provided professional insight into the psychological impact of such betrayals, especially when perpetrated by trusted family members. Their testimony helped the jury understand the long-term consequences of Crawford's actions, moving beyond the immediate physical harm to address the emotional and psychological trauma that would require years of healing. As evidence mounted, Justin's facade began to crack. His initial strategy of denial gave way to a partial confession, though he continued to minimize his actions and deflect responsibility. This shift in tactics only served to reinforce the prosecution's portrayal of a manipulative predator who would say anything to escape consequences. The community's reaction played out in real time on social media and local news outlets. Former teammates struggled to reconcile their memories of a talented athlete with the reality of his crimes. Some initially tried to defend him, clinging to the image they had cherished, but as details emerged, support dwindled. Local sports bars took down his photos. His old jersey number was quietly retired without ceremony. The trial reached its climax during the prosecution's closing arguments. The district attorney stood before the jury, her voice carrying the weight of collective outrage as she methodically reconstructed the betrayal that had shattered multiple lives. She reminded them how Justin Crawford had exploited not just his position as a trusted family member, but also his status as a community figure, someone children had been taught to admire and respect. This case, she emphasized, is about more than the destruction of innocence. It's about the exploitation of trust, the abuse of power, and the responsibility we all share to protect our most vulnerable. Mr. Crawford didn't just betray his wife or his victim, he betrayed every person who ever believed in him, every child who wore his number, every parent who held him up as an example of success. The defense's closing arguments seemed hollow in comparison, their attempts to paint Crawford as a fallen hero who deserved mercy ringing false against the mountain of evidence and testimony. The jury's deliberation was remarkably brief, a clear signal that the prosecution's case had left little room for doubt. When the verdict was delivered, the courtroom fell into a profound silence. Justin Crawford was found guilty on all counts. The judge's voice cut through the tension as he prepared to announce the sentence, his words measured and deliberate. Mr. Crawford, you have taken advantage of your position in this community and violated the most sacred trust, the protection of a child. Your actions demand significant consequences. The sentence was pronounced, 12 years in prison followed by 8 years of probation. Additional conditions included mandatory counseling, registration as a sex offender, and strict limitations on future contact with minors. Each requirement was spelled out in detail, creating a framework of punishment and rehabilitation that would define Crawford's future. Kenya sat through the sentencing with composed dignity, though those closest to her could see the toll the proceedings had taken. When asked if she wished to make a statement, she rose slowly, her voice clear despite the emotion evident in her eyes. I stand here today not just as a betrayed wife, but as someone who chose truth over comfort, justice over loyalty to a man who had already broken every vow we made. To other women who might face similar impossible choices, choose truth. Choose to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The path of justice is painful, but necessary. The victim impact statements that followed provided some of the trial's most powerful moments. Family members detailed how the abuse had changed not just the young victim, but entire family dynamics. Trust, once broken, proved difficult to rebuild. Simple family gatherings became complex exercises in managing trauma and triggers. The ripple effects of Crawford's actions touched every aspect of their lives. The young victim's mother spoke of sleepless nights spent comforting her daughter, of watching a child struggle to reconstruct her sense of safety in a world that had betrayed her. Her words painted a vivid picture of the long-term consequences of abuse, the therapy sessions, the academic struggles, the challenges of helping a young person rebuild trust in adults and authority figures. Mental health professionals testified about the recovery process ahead, emphasizing that healing from such profound betrayal takes years of dedicated work. They spoke of the importance of community support, of believing victims, and of creating environments where speaking up about abuse is encouraged rather than stigmatized. The aftermath of the Justin Crawford case reverberated through the community like aftershocks from an earthquake, touching lives far beyond those directly involved. Local schools implemented enhanced safety protocols, community organizations developed new training programs for recognizing signs of abuse, and parents began having deeper conversations with their children about trust, boundaries, and the importance of speaking up. The local sports community, once proud to claim Justin Crawford as their own, underwent a painful period of self-examination. Athletic programs revised their mentoring systems, implementing stricter oversight and mandatory background checks for all adults working with young athletes. The hero worship that had once seemed natural in their small Georgia town gave way to a more measured approach to celebrating athletic achievement. Kenya Crawford's journey in the months following the trial became a testament to resilience. She chose to stay in their community despite the whispers and sideways glances, transforming her experience into advocacy for other families affected by abuse. Working with local support groups, she helped create a network for those navigating similar traumas, emphasizing the importance of believing victims and supporting those who choose to speak out. Healing isn't linear, she would often say at support group meetings. Some days you feel strong enough to face the world, and others you can barely get out of bed. Both kinds of days are valid, and both are part of the journey forward. The young victim's recovery process became a primary focus for both families. Specialized trauma counseling helped her begin to process the betrayal, though the path forward proved challenging. Simple activities that other children took for granted, sleepovers, family gatherings, trusting adult authority figures, required careful navigation and ongoing support. Her mother, speaking anonymously to protect her daughter's privacy, described the complexity of healing. You watch your child struggling to reconcile their understanding of the world with what happened to them. They're trying to rebuild their sense of safety while processing a betrayal that most adults would struggle to comprehend. As a parent, you feel helpless sometimes, but you keep showing up, keep believing, keep supporting. The case sparked important changes in how local law enforcement handled similar situations. Detective Scruggs developed new protocols for interviewing young victims, emphasizing trauma-informed approaches that prioritized the child's emotional well-being while gathering necessary evidence. His methods would later be adopted by other departments across the state. In the prison system, Justin Crawford faced his own reality. Gone were the cheering crowds and adoring fans, replaced by the monotony of institutional life. His attempts to appeal the sentence were denied, each rejection reinforcing the finality of his fall from grace. Reports from corrections officers described a man struggling to accept his new identity, no longer the celebrated athlete but a convicted offender serving time for crimes that his community would never forget or forgive. Local media coverage evolved from sensational headlines to thoughtful examinations of how communities can better protect their vulnerable members. Journalists who had once covered Crawford's athletic achievements now wrote in-depth pieces about recognizing warning signs, supporting survivors, and the importance of maintaining appropriate boundaries in mentoring relationships. The case became a watershed moment in how the community viewed celebrity and status. Parents who had once encouraged their children to idolize local sports figures now taught more nuanced lessons about admiration and critical thinking. The phrase, "never meet your heroes," took on new meaning, replaced by discussions about healthy role models and the importance of character over achievement. Religious leaders and community organizations grappled with difficult questions about forgiveness, justice, and rehabilitation. Some congregations split over how to respond to the case, particularly those who had previously celebrated Crawford's success as a sign of divine blessing. These conversations led to deeper examinations of how communities balance accountability with compassion, justice with mercy. Schools began incorporating age-appropriate discussions about personal safety and bodily autonomy into their curricula. Teachers received specialized training to recognize signs of abuse and trauma in their students. The local school district established new protocols for reporting suspicious behavior, creating clear channels of communication between educators, counselors, and law enforcement. Annual community workshops emerged, focusing on child protection and family safety. These sessions, initially sparked by the Crawford case, evolved into comprehensive programs addressing various aspects of abuse prevention. Parents, teachers, coaches, and community leaders gathered regularly to update their knowledge and share experiences. The district attorney's office noticed a significant increase in abuse reporting following the case. More victims felt empowered to come forward, knowing that even prominent community figures could be held accountable. The office expanded its victim support services, creating a dedicated unit for handling cases involving minors. Local sports organizations implemented strict new policies. No adult could be alone with young athletes. Background checks became mandatory for everyone from head coaches to volunteer assistants. Security cameras were installed in training facilities, and parent observers were welcomed at all practices and events. In the women's shelter where Kenya now volunteered, conversations often turned to the complexity of choosing justice over family loyalty. Her experience resonated with others facing similar impossible decisions. She shared her story carefully, emphasizing that strength sometimes means walking away from what you once held dear. The young victim showed remarkable resilience through her ongoing recovery. Despite the trauma, she gradually rebuilt her sense of security. Her therapy sessions revealed both the depth of her wounds and her determination to heal. She began writing in a journal, her words becoming a powerful testament to survival and recovery. Justin Crawford's absence from the community left a void that forced people to confront uncomfortable truths. His former teammates struggled with guilt over signs they might have missed. Friends questioned their judgment and character assessment. The community's soul-searching led to deeper discussions about responsibility and vigilance. Local news coverage evolved to include regular features on child safety and family wellness. Journalists who had once focused on sports achievements now investigated systemic issues in child protection. The media's role shifted from merely reporting crimes to educating the public about prevention. The courthouse where the trial took place installed new facilities for young witnesses, creating child-friendly spaces where victims could testify without direct confrontation with their abusers. The criminal justice system adapted, becoming more sensitive to trauma while maintaining its commitment to due process. The impact rippled through religious communities as pastors and spiritual leaders wrestled with questions of sin, redemption, and communal responsibility. Prayer groups formed specifically to support families affected by abuse. Faith leaders received training in trauma-informed pastoral care. Professional athletes visiting local schools shifted their messages from pure inspiration to include discussions about character, respect, and personal responsibility. The hero worship culture that had once dominated youth sports gave way to more balanced perspectives on achievement and integrity. Law enforcement enhanced its investigative techniques for crimes against minors. Detective Scruggs's methodical approach became a model for other departments. Officers received additional training in trauma-informed interviewing, evidence collection, and victim support. Kenya's decision to speak out influenced other spouses facing similar situations. Support groups formed specifically for partners of offenders, providing safe spaces to process betrayal and rebuild lives. These groups emphasized that choosing justice didn't diminish the reality of love once shared. The probation terms awaiting Justin Crawford after his release reflected the community's demands for ongoing accountability. Regular check-ins, restricted movement, counseling requirements, and strict limitations on contact with minors would frame his future life. Prevention became the community's watchword. Organizations implemented buddy systems, open-door policies, and anonymous reporting channels. The message spread that protecting children was everyone's responsibility, not just parents and teachers. Healing continued as a central theme in support group discussions. Survivors shared stories of recovery, setbacks, and resilience. Mental health professionals noted that community acknowledgement of abuse often marked the first step toward individual healing. The case files in the district attorney's office became teaching tools for new prosecutors handling similar cases. The methodical collection of evidence, sensitive handling of testimony, and careful jury selection provided a blueprint for future prosecutions. Years later, the impact of Justin Crawford's crimes and Kenya's courage continued to influence community responses to abuse allegations. The lesson remained clear: no position, no status, no amount of previous good works could excuse the betrayal of trust and innocence. As we draw this haunting story to a close, the Justin Crawford case stands as a stark reminder that appearances can mask dark realities, and true courage often means making impossible choices. What began as a pre-dawn discovery in a Georgia home became a watershed moment for an entire community, challenging our understanding of trust, loyalty, and justice. Kenya Crawford's decision to stand for truth over family ties forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. What would you do if faced with such a devastating discovery? Could you find the strength to expose someone you love to protect an innocent victim? At what point does loyalty to family become complicity in harm? The 12-year prison sentence handed to Justin Crawford may mark the legal conclusion of this case, but its implications continue to ripple through countless lives. A young victim's ongoing journey of healing, a wife's transformation from betrayed spouse to powerful advocate, and a community forever changed by the fall of their hometown hero. Perhaps the most challenging question this case poses is not about the criminal himself, but about our collective responsibility. How many warning signs do we miss in our eagerness to celebrate success? What price do we pay for placing people on pedestals without questioning what lies beneath the surface? If this story has touched you, if it's made you think about your own community and the hidden struggles that might lie behind closed doors, take action. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might help someone facing similar challenges. Subscribe to True Crime Stories Archive for more in-depth explorations of cases that challenge our understanding of human nature. Like and share this video to spread awareness about the importance of protecting our most vulnerable community members. Remember, silence protects predators. Speaking up, though painful, can save lives. Until our next story, stay vigilant, stay compassionate, and never underestimate the power of choosing truth over comfort.